Requirements. What I require of you is nothing more than all you have and nothing less. Because less is only more sometimes, like when you're playing golf or computing the family budget or running track. And although life is a race, it's not a sprint. It's more of a marathon. A marathon where endurance is the key. And anyone who trains can finish. But the question is, can they win? Can they place? Can they show that they have what is needed to compete again and again and again? What I require of you is nothing more than all you have and nothing less. Because less than is an inequality, and your approach must be balanced, or you might fall. And falling is often the result of not being prepared. But in giving all you have, you will be able to ignore the bruises and the pain, and you will get up and continue to give your all. Because in life, there is nothing less than the depth of failure when you know you could have given more. Yo, what's up, fam? We're here again. I got one of my good friends with us talking about what black dads think. That is our agenda. That is our focus. And so today, we're hanging out with my man. Oh, if you want to catch us, we're on we're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You got Apple Play or Apple Music, and then Spotify. So wherever you get podcasts, you can find us. But what black dads think today, I'm talking to my man Marco Troy Williams, right? I didn't want to give that other name slide on up in there, right? Yeah. How you feeling, MT?
I'm great, man.
Cool. You coming from work?
Coming from work.
I see you
full
all,
day.
you got your whole thing on.
I try to do my thing,
Yeah,
man.
okay.
At least fool them a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, right? Yeah, so we got Marco Troy Williams in the house, folks. Marco Troy, MT, Troy Man, back in the day. We got it all, baby,
Wow.
The wild part about this is that I think for you and I, man, I don't remember a time not knowing you. And that so today should be a good opportunity for us to kind of chop some things up. Little background: this is Parker and Hunter's dad. That would be fair.
That works.
Ralph and Johnny's baby boy.
There
Is that
you
all
go.
right?
I'll
Cool.
take that.
And then we got It's funny because you being my god brother, but the piece of this is this Howard University thing. And when I think in terms of all of our connection,
Right.
the greatest connection is the fact you connected me with Sonia. So introduced me to my wife. That means everything. So I think I talked about all the little things that need to be there. But I want to start off with this, man.
Well, we got to say too, the reason why I went to Howard University.
Why did you
That
come to
was
Howard?
you got me there. I was going to a number of different schools, but we were so tight
Right.
in high school, and you were a year ahead and already there.
Yeah.
Said drop everything and get here.
Yeah.
I applied late, sight unseen, and never looked back.
Yeah.
The rest is history.
And it's funny because as much fun as I was having in Howard, it paled in comparison to the damage that you did when you got up in that space.
Oh
I'm
my.
like,
Oh
this
my.
Dude, this dude didn't hit the ground running. He never hit the ground. I'm like, what is going on, man?
You know how we do it.
Yeah, so it's funny because when I think in terms of just growing up, one of my probably fondest memories is and I'll go back to why I'm bringing this up, is us walking through the streets of Inglewood passing out flyers when your dad was running for, city council?
Councilman, yeah.
Yeah, councilman,
Yeah.
right? And I just think, and then he paid us he gave us maybe $5 and a trip to McDonald's,
Take us
right?
to eat. That was
Yeah,
the thing. Jump in the back of the El Camino truck.
Looking
and
forward
take us
to that
eat.
all the time, right? And so, but for you, man, when I think about you, and the reason why I wanted you to come in today is because it seems like your life has done full circle, right? I guess if this was the Martin show, you would be a cross between Tommy and Hustle Man.
Oh my.
Do you know why I would say that? Why I might say that, man?
No, I really don't.
You are lying, bro. You are lying. No, but seriously,
Right.
you've had, and we'll talk about, working and all this kind of stuff, but you just think in terms of picture Tommy Ford, people wondering what he did, and Hustle Man, he always had a hustle, man. And so that's always been kind of, your thing is that working and making sure that you can manage that. And our topic
Right.
today actually is going to be, it's about jobs. It's about careers, and then it's about marketability,
Right.
and those are things that you know really well. And we'll talk about that. But before we do anything, I want to kind of get into who is Marco the man. I was thinking before when I was prepping for the show, I said, man, we've clocked a lot of hours together, right?
A lot.
And
On
some of
both coasts.
yeah, word. That's true.
And down south.
We
made
and-
trips.
Oh my god, I forgot about the road trips, right? But I'm sitting here, man, and I was thinking, I said, when our parents meet, our moms met, they were applying for a job.
Applied for LAUSD.
Yeah,
the school
yeah,
district,
and
right?
both of them went on to be teachers and stuff like that, and then our dad, they were like best friends,
Exactly.
on a lot of different levels, but one of them was at the bar.
At the bar.
You know,
At the bar.
they were doing their thing, and not like at the public bar, like downstairs at your dad's house, right?
Yes, true.
But when I think about your parents, who were my godparents, they were like, y'all was kind of like y'all was kind of like black elite, bro. Y'all lived in Inglewood when it was all white, had the fat crib. I remember when y'all got the pool built, that, you was out of town, but I was there
But
for that.
we spend time in that.
Yeah.
Dad, as an entrepreneur, had the construction company.
Right.
That your dad also was partnered in
Part of that,
part in
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so having all that land in that yard, and then he turned around and said, I'm going to build a pool.
Right.
And remember, he dug the dirt at first,
Right.
and we'd be in there running around with dirt bikes. Then he put the cement down.
Mhm.
We was on skateboards, and then before he polished it and put down the real cement, and then
Right.
said the water,
Right.
and said, "Don't get in here till I'm done."
Right.
And then of course, then I was
Right.
going. So you
Right.
got to
That's-
christen it before I
got
did.
to see. I got to see it because remember I couldn't swim then.
Oh, that's right.
So I didn't get to swim
That's
in it,
right.
but I got to kind of see it, right? But you talked about, both your parents, we went to Howard, but both your parents, they went to HBCUs too, right?
Right.
You know,
Tennessee
and-
State
Yeah, Tennessee
University.
State. And I think you were headed there or there or where were you headed?
Didn't apply to Tennessee, Florida A&M, because my family's from Florida, and so my dad's side, and so it was Morehouse.
Okay.
Got to Morehouse, a few.
So you was
others.
going to do the HBCU
I was
thing.
going to do HBCU,
But you hadn't thought about Howard.
But I didn't think about the Mecca.
Wow.
Until,
Wow, okay.
And sure glad I didn't do another one.
Okay.
Although those are good schools.
Mhm.
However, though, it's Howard was the perfect fit.
Well,
for me.
that was your little safety. So if
Did-
anybody's listening, you don't want to be
did-
clowned at HBCU. I got you, man. But seriously, man, what was it like? I spent a lot of time at your household, and I can tell you my experience, but
Mhm.
knowing, your mom, school teacher, dad, engineer, high expectations. Like I said, you guys were part of the black elite. What was it like growing up in your household, man? And kind of how do you remember your childhood and things that kind of helped shape you?
Well, I think my mom was a fashion plate.
Still is.
Always, right? Yeah,
Still
yeah.
is,
So
yeah.
she was at Tennessee State walking across campus in heels and those things. So no doubt. And of course, my dad was the serious disciplinarian, but he would reward you for performance in those things. And so it was great. I mean, they entertained. So we would always have people at the house. All their friends were my aunt and uncles, things of that nature. My dad was really strong on integrity. He was really strong on dedication, commitment, keep your word. He would let you know too, it's my house. These are the rules.
That part.
You don't
That
have,
part. He was
you don't,
serious
you
about
don't have
that.
a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. So
Right.
until then, so making it clear. But ex-Marine,
Mm-hmm.
he was an entrepreneur, as I mentioned, worked for the city where he retired, city of Los Angeles,
So
civil
spin
engineer.
this real quickly, man,
Mhm.
because you're telling us a lot about your dad. What was your relationship like with your dad?
It was actually good. I had a
Okay.
good relationship. But, again, if I stepped out of line, as I did on many occasions, he put me back in line, which I needed. So it was good. But
Is that
really-
is that as a little guy, as a college guy, everything in
Man, that was
between?
my whole life. My dad, he wasn't the whole time. But again, being from the South,
Mm-hmm.
a black man, he knew, what black men were going through, what they needed to do. Discipline, I told you, he was ex-Marine.
Right.
He held a couple degrees, so he knew the whole focus of education and everything like that as well. So growing up, I couldn't have asked for a better household. The whole family dynamic. I had one sibling, it was my sister, myself, and then the house. So great. Very supportive across the board.
Okay.
Life lessons that I'll have with me,
I'm gonna ask you
Until
about
I'm
this
gone.
later. But give me
Right.
one. Give me one.
Well, I think the hardworking. He made it clear when people would be buying, you try to keep up with the Joneses and that stuff. And I need this, I need this. He's like, you don't need that. You don't need that sweatsuit. I was making the button-down shirts back in the day, cutting a little slit here and putting a button on. Because boss might have been like, yeah, no, we're not buying that one right now. But again, there was nothing I wanted.
Wait, pause for a second. You said literally you were make, and I
Oh,
remember that.
We would make
It's
those.
like cut a little slit,
You
put
cut
a little button
slit,
on
put a
it.
little
Yeah.
button. You heard Biggie in the song. Don't look at the label. You know, you might have alligator sewn on right here, but it might not have been Lacoste.
Yeah.
You know, so that whole thing. But no, Dad was always hard work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even when we would see people on the street that needed work or something like that, or they wanted a handout, first thing I say was, "My dad has a construction company. You want to work?"
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that kind of stuff as well. So he always put that in family first. He was family oriented. You know, I spent 6 weeks in Meridian, Mississippi, where my mom's from, 6 weeks in Fort Pierce, Florida, where my dad's from, every summer.
Right.
Best time of my life. Loved it.
Okay.
And then he would come down and visit and stuff. But,
Okay.
you know, just I think family first was the most important, being the provider.
Okay. Okay.
You know, that was
that's consistent with what I know about you, just that whole kind of providing kind of thing and the whole loyalty piece, you know. Yeah.
And then even it's still, I talked to you before, a lot of people were into the stock market and things of that name. My dad was into real estate. So that's
hold on
my
to that,
thing
because I
on
want to
that.
come to that in a little bit, because that says a lot about, you know, just kind of how you kind of approach some things that I want to make sure that we get to, because your dad was, and he did stuff, he moved in silence, man.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of stuff I learned about kind of how he was rolling and things like that I didn't see it because I just went over there and, you know, and just was experiencing it as a kid. But this dude, you know, Jordan, Zodi's daughter, she told me this years ago. She said, real G's move in silence like lasagna.
Like lasagna.
And I'm like, got it, you
Like
know.
lasagna.
But that's kind of how Pops was.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, your dad, you know. Parker Drew, that's your baby girl. And this show, you know, this season we're highlighting dads with daughters. We're not necessarily talking about the dads and the daughters, but we're highlighting dads with daughters, right? Okay. And then you got Hunter. You know, Hunter is a junior?
Sophomore.
He's a sophomore at UCI.
Correct.
And then Parker just recently graduated from.
Well, she graduates in May, so May 19th.
But she did. But did she? What you tell me how this works?
So last year, she goes to Smith College in Northampton, Massachusetts. She got her bachelor's degree in education and swag, as she said. I said, well, wait a minute. Because, you know, I'm in entertainment. Swag is gift bags, promotion items. I'm like, swag, I need you to pack your stuff up and come home. She's like, no, Dad, study of women and gender.
Okay, so that's her thing.
With an international appeal. So that's when she studied abroad in Amsterdam and Morocco, that whole field. Okay. And then she did a year program, so she graduates this May with her master's in education from Smith College as well.
What makes you more proud about her? What makes you most proud? I got to articulate. What makes you most proud about her?
Her character.
Okay.
Just the fact that it's so funny. Parker read 75 books last year. I said, Parker, that's part of the academic. No, Dad. I'm like, well, hold on then. Okay. That was just because she wanted to. Okay. So I just like she enjoys herself. You know, she has her friends. She hangs out. She has a good time. But she also is focused.
Wait, she has a friend. What you saying?
No, she has her friends.
Oh, I thought she had a friend.
I got to get the shotgun. I got to get the shotgun ready for that part.
She got a friend.
No, I ain't saying that part.
Is this
and remember, they skipped her grade. So Parker's a year grade-wise. So already I'm like, wait a minute, you rushing her out the house, rushing her in college already and things. So she enjoys, as a teenage, young adult, type things as well, but she's focused.
Okay.
And I think, and it's been just a pleasure to be her parent. Okay. You know, to be the father, because she hasn't caused any problems. Now, some may come, right? I'm saying it now.
I mean, I don't know, man. She's 21 now, so you know,
no,
you may be beyond that.
Yeah,
you know?
She's great, man, and knows what she wants, and I kind of instill that when you say actions speak louder than words with my dad, so she can kind of see the blueprint in those things. So very proud to be her father.
All right, cool. So what we want to talk about today, man, is kind of just employment matters, right? Okay. So like I said, jobs, careers, and marketability, all that kind of stuff.
You always act like you don't know what I do,
man. Tommy, I'm not sure, bro.
You are something else, man.
I know. It's like this. Now I think I know more than any other job that you've ever had, and we're well, better than that, bro.
He's like, let's go through the job.
Exactly. You know, because you graduate from college with a poli-sci degree, right?
Correct.
Your plans was to go to law school.
Correct.
But you ain't been to law school, and you didn't had a grip of job. Bro, I'm just trying to understand, man. Yeah. You've done pretty well for yourself, right?
Well, I was in the city of politics, so I'm thinking, okay, go to law school, you know, and took a business class and never looked back. And then followed that whole entertainment.
What are some of the companies that you work for?
Can I tell you all of them? Is this kid friendly on here?
It is what it is, man. Do your thing, yeah.
So I started my career, I was at KJLH radio station.
Okay.
So a station here that Stevie Wonder owns. I was in sales. Okay. And then I moved into cable programming. So
Okay.
at that point, I'm the BET rep. So when you speak about these channels, every channel has a marketing department, accounting department, an HR department, a programming, a production, any and all that, right? So I was the BET rep here on the West Coast.
Okay.
You know, they were based.
So we got
back east.
KGLH, we got BT.
And then after that, I was the Playboy rep. So
You use the Playboy at BT?
No, Playboy TV. So now I'm the Playboy Entertainment rep. So the same thing, I would deal with the cable operators.
Okay.
You know, the multiple
So
subscription
this is all still in
operators.
cable?
Still in cable.
Okay, got it.
So
Keep going.
Playboy had a channel. Then I was with Ian Style Network.
Does that even still exist, bro?
He does.
Okay,
So
all right.
Style, they acquired, someone else acquired it. They
Okay.
changed, I think it was Esquire or something like that.
Okay,
But
okay.
yeah, so those channels. But Ian
So that's
still
four. We
there.
have four now.
We had 3 programming services and 1 radio station.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Keep going.
And then after that, I did move to the broadcast side. So when you look at me making these moves, it's moves that enhance my value, my growth,
Okay.
my experience.
Did you always, with every move that you made, was it a move where you made more money, or was it about titles? What was it about in terms of that move? Was it?
It was a combination.
Okay.
Now, when we talked about our moms, something like education, they may say somebody works somewhere 30 years, 35 years. In entertainment, that's not really the case.
Okay.
So companies get acquired, you know, things of that nature, you move. So it's a combination. You can move for title or you can move for money.
So we have four.
Right, we
Keep
have
going.
four.
Keep going.
Or it could be something where you don't know who's watching you. And I'm going to tell you about one job where they created the role for me.
Okay.
So it wasn't even an existing role,
All right.
but they saw how I was moving and what I was doing.
So we have four.
Right.
Keep going.
So we have 4. So that is what
That
I
was
tell you.
Ian Style.
That was Ian
last
Style.
one, yeah.
So after Ian Style Network, actually, I then moved on to the broadcast side.
All right.
So now I'm not cable programming anymore. Cable's
So
kind of
this-
new.
So this your third lane.
Yeah, so cable's
Okay.
kind of new and coming out. So again, too, and I'm gonna take you through the fact that I'm the sales guy who turned marketing guy, who turned D&I guy, who now is the production HR guy.
Okay.
So it kind of takes you through those elements. So I see the fork in the road and I take both directions all the time.
Okay.
So when I left Ian Style, I then went to the broadcast side. So I'm gonna date myself a little bit. I was with the WB network.
Okay. So
It's
that's
now-
5. This is 5.
Right. It's now the CW network.
Okay.
But then it was the WB
But this is
network.
5, though.
That's fine.
Okay.
So, but now on the broadcast
5
side-
distinct companies.
Right.
And then 4 different lanes. 3 different lanes.
3 different lanes.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going.
So, and on the broadcast side, because now you're dealing with not a limited scope with cable channels, you're dealing with a much larger audience. So that's the WB network.
Okay.
So that's what took me there. And then after the WB network, I went to a startup. Now you can do some startup channels and things because with that too, elevates you, you know, both compensation
what was the
wise,
startup?
title wise. And that was, well, when I was moving there, that would have been the Africa channel.
Okay, so now we have 6.
Right. So the Africa channel.
Same lane? Still?
No. Now Africa channel is back in cable program.
Okay, all right.
And I'm in marketing. So
Okay.
again, sales when I was in radio, affiliate relations. So kind of a hybrid when I did those other cable networks I mentioned and the broadcast. And now here I am truly marketing. I'm
Okay.
vice president of marketing for the Africa channel.
Okay.
Dikembe Mutombo was our first investor. Ambassador Andrew Young headed up our advisory board, you know, that kind of thing. So great opportunity to tie in with a channel that was just starting to
So
get going.
we at 6. Keep going.
Starting
Keep
to get
going.
going. Then I get recruited. You know, we talk about recruiting and those things.
Mhm.
I get recruited because Warner Brothers now wants me back. And they're like,
Okay.
we're creating this position where you would run all of D&I. Now, at that
Okay.
point, it was D&I and talent sourcing.
Right.
Now it's DEI. Now
Right.
it's DEIB.
Right.
You know, so
All
it
that
can have
stuff. Yeah,
all of
yeah.
those.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
now I'm running diversity inclusion
Okay.
for Warner Brothers Studios.
All right.
So now you move from cable programming, broadcast TV. Now I'm at an entire
You go
studio.
back to them.
I go back to
Now
them.
you had 7 jobs.
Right, but when I went back to them, remember though, one was a portion of it was the network side.
mhm.
Now I'm back with the studio side.
All right.
So it's a different element to tie in with
Okay,
that.
keep going.
Right. So then I'm there in talent sourcing.
So all I'm doing is counting jobs right, now.
Right.
I ain't counting.
Right.
I ain't counting responsibility.
And talent sourcing is finding senior level diverse and female
Okay.
recruiting for
Okay.
the job bank, for the
All right.
pool to have that in and have that available.
All right.
So after,
We're 7.
so then after one about now, when we talk about, we're going to mention, you said unemployment and those kind of things, it was a downside. I mean,
Okay.
it got hit in the marketplace.
So
Studios
let's pause right there.
got
Let's pause
hit.
right there because that's what I think is the next phase. So here's my question right here.
Mhm.
I was looking at unemployment rates. Right now, you didn't have 7 jobs. First, before we talk about that, man, what was it about you when you're every job? You know, what did you do, or what was it that you brought to the table that made you so employable? Because folks looking for jobs can't find jobs, this, that, and the other during this same window of time when you move. What made?
And
what
I got
do you
people
think,
finding jobs for me,
you know,
creating
exactly.
jobs. Right?
What do you think
Right.
made you so employable, man?
Well, I think one thing when you come in, you have to think of yourself as a brand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And in thinking of yourself as a brand, you have to show what makes you valuable.
Okay.
When I would deal with cable programming and my clients would be the cable operator, I knew their business better than they knew their business.
Okay.
They would say, Marco, I have a budget meeting. I'm going to be talking to somebody. What do you think I should do?
But T, this is before. This is after you've gotten in.
Mhm.
I'm saying, what is it that made these people? What did you when you sat at the interview when you interacted with them? You know, initially or in other spaces.
Mhm.
What made you be them look like we want this guy
You got to know their business better than they know their business.
even before you're part of it?
Even when I would do a resume, okay,
You say your resume.
When I would do my
Uh-huh.
resume,
Mhm.
people would, at this time, people would have one resume. It can be 5 different jobs.
Okay.
It can be community relations. It could be accounting. It could be marketing. It could be sales. It could be IT. It could be HR. It could be production. And they use that same resume.
Okay.
That doesn't show you're serious. If you're serious about a job, you need to look at the job description, the responsibilities, and incorporate that into your resume.
You got your HR hat on.
Right.
Hold on one second.
Okay.
Is that what you were doing
I was
as a
doing
guy
that
looking for jobs?
even
Okay.
early on.
Okay.
And after I would apply for something, you know how people do the follow-up notes? Not everybody. I would do the follow-up notes. I take it back. I would do top 10 reasons to hire Marco Williams.
You sent these to
I
people?
would send that when I would send my thank you note.
Oh, you on some different kind of
Right.
stuff.
So then they're looking like, well, wow, okay, you know. And I would say top 10. Now, reason number 10, because, you know, so that whole thing. So
I think one time you told me that one of these companies hired you for your Rolodex.
that's when they created the position. And Warner Brothers, it was like, at that point, Namick.
Rolodex.
Yeah, Rolodex.
For your
yeah.
phone directory or something,
that takes
right?
you back.
Yeah, but go ahead.
But that was the thing. At that point, I'm president of a local organization, an entertainment organization. They see me moving there. They know my contacts and information, and they were looking for a position for their pipeline of candidates.
So I want folks to kind of look at, you know, look at me. So one thing that you're saying is I need to make sure that I know their business, quote unquote, better than they do.
Correct.
Second thing is that I can't be shy. Because when
Correct.
you tell me top 10 reasons to hire Marco Williams, average person ain't gonna do it. Like, that's kind of arrogant. That's kind of,
And you
know.
have to interview a company like they're interviewing you. When you go in, you don't just let them ask you all the questions. You sit there like, okay, all right, fine.
Right.
You need to find out if this is the company you want to be at.
Okay.
This shouldn't be a job. It should be a career you're looking for.
Okay.
And if that's
What's
the
the
case,
difference? What's the difference?
the job can be gone tomorrow. You can say, you know, I took that for now because I wanted some health benefits. I took it now because pay. When you look at a career, you're showing the passion and say, I want to grow with this company or with this industry
Okay.
and be there for a while.
Okay.
So that's
good.
what you
good.
want to look into. But yeah, you definitely want to interview them as they're interviewing you. And you want to look at the company. You want to look at the growth pattern, what they're doing technology-wise, what's
Didn't
going
you work
on.
for American Airlines too?
Well, now that was right out of college.
So that's another job.
I was in a management trainee program with American when I was also doing sales for KJLH. So I was working the two jobs.
Okay, got it.
So I was doing that during the day, and then I was doing movie screenings and promotions and helping Todd and Mark Pereira do their grand opening at LA Hot Wings and having D.L. Hughley pre-tattoos and everything out there pulling names out the raffle.
So you just dropped a whole lot of names.
There
right?
you go.
So
But Todd and Mark are classmates.
Yeah,
So
hopefully we'll have some folks checking this out.
Yeah,
They'll be
there
like,
you
I
go.
know this dude. I know
There
this dude.
you go.
But now watch this, man. We're sitting here and we're talking about, you know, the things that you did to make yourself employable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we know that folks listen to our podcast. You know, we got young fathers. We got fathers from all walks of life, and that's kind of who we're appealing to. But not just fathers. It could be cats who want to be fathers, just men.
Correct.
You know, but primarily our focus is dads. I was looking at some numbers on just employment and unemployment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as of February, the unemployment rate in the United States was 3.8%, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for black men 20 years and older, what do you think that rate was?
It's double figures.
Yeah, no, not double. It's only 6.5 as of this year. But in December, it was 4.5, and ours just keeps rising. Where everybody else is kind of stable, right?
Okay.
Now, when you, and I'm sure that if you kind of look at it and kind of distill it in some other, you may get higher numbers. But this is just recent, right?
Right.
So I'm sitting here. I remember a few years. You're probably about 50.
Right.
You know.
And that's good at number, is it? Because I was thinking more around 10, but that's good. It's not that high.
You know, it's not that high, but it's still higher than everybody else.
Correct.
Right. So, but this is what I remember, man. All these jobs, we got 8 jobs we talked about, and every job you were moving forward and promoting and this, that, and the other. And then you find yourself for the first time as an adult, you know, who've been your dad, like, you need to work, you need to be about your business, you know, all this kind of stuff. For the first time, you find yourself unemployed, man. And not unemployed. How did you get to that point? What happened? Because you were about to talk, I think it was coming out of Warner Brothers.
Right.
You know, how did that happen? But then, you know, just, you know, how did it impact you personally, emotionally? What was that about?
Well, one thing, when you're working for a company, this is California, it's at will. So if they're downsizing, if they're, you know, tying it with another company, if they're reducing staff by downsizing, if they're joining another staff. When I was at the WB network, it combined with UPN to create the CW. So they were saying, take one person here, one person there, one person here, one person there, because they had double staff.
Right.
So you can run into that. It's not a guarantee that you're always going to be in a position, unless it's your company, unless you know, run a thing, you can do something with it.
Right.
So they were downsizing. At that point, Warner Brothers was partnering with somebody, and they were looking to reduce costs and revenue, things of that nature, increase it, whether it be home entertainment and movies and TV, but decrease it maybe on staff and those things. So they had a reduction in staff. So then I'm out. Now, it's funny you asked that question, because my sister says you do unemployment better than anybody I know. You know, like, you unemployed and you out here buying this and doing this and doing it. But I think, too, you have to be smart about it when you're if you find yourself in that situation, okay? I've never lived check to check.
Okay.
So you always have some kind of reserve.
Let's drill down on that, because you're in Southern California. How did you, when I know that, you know, some of us start off at home plate with a bat in our hand, but some of us start off on second base. Right. You know, and I would say, you know, you didn't start off at home plate with a bat in your hand. You had a little bit of a head start. You wasn't born on third base, but you definitely wasn't, you know, born in the dugout.
I might have been trying to steal first. Yeah. So I wasn't around in first or anything of that nature. Yeah. But you have to know, I would live below my means.
But okay, so I had an apartment. So this is where I'm going. Before you go there, talk to me. You talk about what you were doing. Talk to me about what that looks like for young folks now. You know, for folks, not even young, for people now. So you said you had an apartment. You said you're living below your means. Go ahead.
I had an apartment, and you save. You know, it's to the point. I know it sounds easy enough to say that, but even if you say, I put away $20, I put away $50. It's certain things I just would not touch. So I would have it set up to, I can live, you got to pay rent. You have to have, if you have a car note or something like that. But how they're doing all this DoorDash now and all this kind of stuff, I'd go to the grocery store and make food and take that to work. Versus saying spending money and spend it there. Maybe I didn't go out every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You know, things of that nature.
You know what I'm laughing at, man?
What is that?
That you had some moves that you saved money on in college, too.
Yeah, so I mean, you
had some things that you did in college.
Just a couple things.
Save a couple dollars.
But I say that to say, just to be smart about things, you just save. You know, I didn't have to be the guy in the most fancy car. You know, I didn't wear a lot of jewelry, because you can have all that and be in an apartment. Right. I'd rather not have that and have my first home. Okay. You know, so it's kind of, you just have to say that certain things you're going to put to the side and back away from.
So you're unemployed. Shelly, your sister, said that you do unemployment better than everybody else. What, you know, how were you navigating that? And then what are some things that you had to do to kind of, because, you know, we know the story, you know, some moves you had to make, and what's some challenges
Well, generally when you're unemployed, you have a say, but you don't want to live off of that, okay? Because that's going to dwindle and go. Right. And if unemployment lasts longer than you expect, then that can be tough. So mine was an extended unemployment at that period.
Extended, like how long were we out?
I want to say 3 years.
That's what I thought. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure, but I
It
was
was
like,
3
I
years.
think it's like 3.
But
Okay.
during those 3 years, I did everything from, I did some consulting work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I did tied in with HBO to
Mhm.
be a script reader.
Okay.
HBO gets a ton of product in. They don't have
Mhm.
enough staff to read that.
Mm-hmm.
I would read and give reviews on if they should look at this and putting this in production or post to make it a project.
Did you get that position based upon a relationship that you had?
Yeah,
Or you just,
yeah,
okay. All right.
yeah.
Got it.
So that was there.
So you leveraged some relationships. during
Leverage
that
some
time.
relationship
Okay.
on that. I tied in. I was doing security. And it's so funny.
Like security,
and
like
I was doing
wait,
security with the
'Cause
little.
I know a little bit, but tell me
No,
what kind of
I was
security
doing
you were
security
doing,
with the
bro.
little jacket and late night and the whole thing. And it's so funny because as I was doing security,
Mhm.
the guy comes to me and said, "Man, you're a different cat. You're not my regular security cat." So I briefly did security just on the grounds,
Mhm.
boots on the ground. Next thing you know, he's like, "I got a supper club, or I got an event, or I got
Mhm.
something like that." But it was still security in those things.
So similar to you finding jobs earlier, you did some things to set yourself apart.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Go ahead.
So that, man, I looked at recycling. I would
Okay.
never, everybody throw away plastic in cans.
Mhm.
Oh, you got to save all that. You got to save all that. We recycle it and doing
legit,
that.
So legit, you were going to the spaces where folks are, to the recycling spaces and taking back cans and bottles and the whole
dropping off
shot.
cans.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what, man, I got 2 kids at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I got 2 kids.
How old were they at that
and so they would have been 14 and 12.
Okay.
And they couldn't understand if they come here and be like, "Wait, the cabinets are bare."
Mm-hmm.
So
Because they were living between you and their mom.
we were co-parenting.
Okay, right.
So Monday through Thursday,
Mm-hmm.
I might not have cut the heat on in the house at all, and might put nothing in the cabinets. But when they came over on Friday, like, we got 3 or 4 different kind of cereals, and we got everything you can imagine. So because again, you just want to make sure they're provided for, and that's what I came up. I never knew a deadbeat dad and not providing.
Right.
So everything was there. So yeah, I went through that whole transition. Matter of fact, when I was out of work
Mm-hmm.
and I would hear about things, I would send leads to other people.
Mhm.
People were like, "Man, you don't even have a job, and you sending leads?"
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, the job's not for me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so I know I'm blessed and highly favored."
So how did you weather the storm, bro? I mean,
You stay focused.
So you had your savings,
right. You save your savings.
What else? Some other streams of income?
and
What did you
then
have?
those other consulting things. I got a
Okay.
job on with City of Hope.
Okay.
Well, I was doing some things with City of nowhere near the salary I was doing before, but it was a great opportunity and a
Okay.
job.
Okay.
So now it was a slight time because my whole career has been entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
So to do that. So that was great to tie in, and it was still community relations, still keeping the juices flowing, still out in the marketplace and those things. So it's just little things you do that you can tie in with means that help you come across.
So when you said you said something, let me look here. You talked about
But let me just say this part right here.
Okay,
though.
go ahead. I know what I'm talking. I remember now, but go ahead.
My Lord and Savior Jesus Christ had a plan for me that didn't end there. I had a season. Okay, so even if you go through that, and that's some tough time, you appreciate coming out on the back end even more.
Right. No,
I'm back in entertainment at a higher salary than I was. Life is great.
Yeah.
Kids are great. Health is great.
Yeah.
I got a number of friends on different medications and all that. I'm not on any of that. So again, I just think it's seasons and things you go through. But again, I think it's too, when I was telling people about jobs. And they were like, "Wow, he's doing that." So it wasn't I'm just upset and mad at the world because I'm not doing it. I'm gonna roll up in a ball and sitting on the corner of the room. Not at all.
Right. And old adage is just this, tough times don't last, tough people do.
That's
it.
it.
And by God's grace, that kind of maps that out. But
That's
you
it.
said something earlier in terms of
And let
your
me tell
dad-
you,
what
let
your
me tell you
dad
this-
talked
let me tell you
about
this
in terms of how
quote
to keep
too.
money. Go
The
ahead.
quote, "Nothing
Go ahead.
can dim the light that shines from within." So it didn't matter when you hear that cliche of people, "You can't do this, you can't do it." Oh, I knew what I was capable of.
Okay.
So even if it was a speed bump,
3 years out, you still wasn't doubting yourself.
3 years I wasn't down myself because it wasn't like nothing was coming in. It wasn't like I didn't have anything. But you don't want to dwindle and use your savings and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So what stopped the family vacations might have stopped for a couple years. That kind of stuff. But right back at it after that.
So you said earlier, that your dad, he had this in the entrepreneurial space. He had his job. He had his business, but he also did some things in real estate.
Correct.
Is that something that you dabbled in, or that's something that you've done? And then how did you manage that during the time because you had a nice house when you
Right.
were unemployed. How did you work on it?
My thing is that I worked so hard to get to those situations that I refuse to let those go away. So when you hear people, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I didn't have to sell any property. My FICO score didn't drop. I didn't miss any payments. Anything of that
said
nature.
my FICO score didn't drop.
So anything of that nature, because I was focused. It was certain things that I knew I needed to do. And yes, with my dad being in real estate, that really, like I said, I'll do stock and mutual fund. I got 401k, so I had to do that, the minimum, right? But knowing my dad was flipping properties, buying properties, reselling them, knowing that he was buying properties and having renters and leases in those properties, yes, that was definitely the focus. So when I buy my first home, I buy a home that was a probate.
So talk to me. Well, not even to me. Talk to the young brother who says, "Well, you know what? My dad. I don't have a dad that's putting it down like that, or I'm trying to get there, but I don't really know where to start."
Well, a couple of things. How young are they? Because remember, I'm a member of a number of organizations. So when we talk about the 100 Black Men, when we talk about health and wellness, when we talk about development, when we talk about mentorship, leadership, all of that within there. So we have those programs for young males. And we were doing so much of it that the single moms would come and say,
I'm 27.
Right.
I'm 27.
But I'm saying the moms would come and say, well, what can I do for my daughter? Because you're doing so well. So it was captivated with that. So if you're older and you're saying more so 27, then again, it's just at any point, whatever you're doing, you can say, I'm going to stash away a little bit. If you can say, I can live off of on 3/4 on what I was doing before. If I can live on half what I'm doing before, then you start putting money away. When I bought that house, I told you it was a probate. Okay. So with the probate, if you're a first time buyer, you 203K, you'll get money back to get the home.
How did you know about like 203K? How did you know about that?
At that point in college, I'm working for Miracle Mortgage, a real estate company.
So this is why you were in college?
Right.
Okay.
So I would come home for summers, I would work there. So you would kind of know certain things about it, but you still had to get funding. Still needed some revenue to do that kind of stuff. Some people go in and buy something with somebody. So that could be an option you consider too. Somebody might say, I'm going to buy a duplex. I live on one side, have the other one, rent it out. Now you're getting the tax breaks and those things. But bottom line, if you're 27, the biggest thing is you got to try to get some of the money down. Now you won't get your forever home. Maybe you're not living in that most desirable area. Maybe you're on the east side. Maybe you're
wherever.
Right. Maybe you're in a one-car garage, one bedroom. Maybe you're in an efficiency, no bedrooms. But you start off with that. The thing is, you got to be in the game. You got to be at the table to be able to do anything. If you're renting, you can't get an equity line of credit. You can't refinance. You can't do any of that. You can't work to get the lowest mortgage interest rate by renting. But if you do get into, let me partner with somebody, let me find a small piece here. If I find somewhere even out of state.
Keep that FICO score tight.
Right, keep that FICO score tight. If you find something out of state and find a piece of property, any of that allows you to be able to maneuver with those things. So at 27, first thing is to try to save. Maybe double up. I told you, I've worked a couple jobs before. Work a couple jobs, maybe say this income I'm going to live on, this income I'm going to save. Okay. And then as you start saving, don't think nothing's too little because what you have to do is you have to crawl before you walk.
Right.
So even if you get a small amount of money, think about if you get a condo. Condo is not same as buying a home.
Right.
You can get it cheaper.
Right.
Now you have HOAs, so be careful on your HOA dues and that kind of stuff as well.
But your point being is just this is that like you said, crawl before you walk. Something.
Right.
So let's build on this conversation about this 23-year-old Black man in LA. I'm just going to use that, right? And so we know in terms of when we talked about the unemployment rates, right?
Correct.
Right now you are HR dude.
Correct.
Tell me a little bit about what you're responsible for in that job. And then I want to ask you some questions about this 27-year-old or this 35-year-old, whatever. But what do you do as the HR guy?
You still don't know what I do.
Come on, man. Tommy, stop it.
Sounds good. Okay. So as I told you, the sales guy to the Philly relations, the hybrid, D&I, and now HR. Okay. So human resources. So what I do now I'm on the production side now. So that's a whole nother lane. It's a whole nother shift in what they're doing when you talk about production and entertainment. Okay. So the way it's set up now, we use ADP. Okay, so I'm the
ADP, the payroll people, right?
And
Okay.
they also handle the 401k and things like that. So I'm the point person there.
Okay.
So if anybody wants to buy a home, they go through our sale, I have to sign off for it and things of that nature. I also do the 5500 filing. That's the tax filings for a corporation.
Okay.
And I do it with ADP and do that right there. Next, I head up recruiting.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so I head up recruiting on the corporate side. Now, when you think about productions, we've got a lot of production teams and building the stages and paint and art. I don't do the recruiting for there. I do it for the corporate side. So within the office, whether it's legal, IT, communications, production, programming, facilities, anything of that nature. And then we have different units. So it can be with various units when you talk about productions, when you have a larger production company.
Right.
I also handle all the global and domestic investigations.
Okay.
You know, we make sure we do the trainings before each production so it can be unconscious bias and anti-harassment. But they're still sitting in front of me with an investigation. So did you listen to the trainings? Did you pay attention? And things of that nature.
Let's pull it back to this.
And then let me tell you the last thing. The last thing under this umbrella is I'm a TV production partner. So then I'm on set with shows as well. So all of that is under my umbrella under HR. Now, also in HR, we have people dealing with contracts for people, the job. We have people dealing with benefits, you know, things of that nature. But my 4 buckets are kind of the one I just told you.
So you had to learn, I'm sure you had to go to school, take some classes once you got the job to kind of learn all these different elements of the job, right?
Correct.
But let's go to this recruiting piece. We're talking about, you know, black males, we're often the most underemployed. Okay. And then when we get into jobs, you know, we don't get hired. And or if we get hired at we don't get fairly compensated. Or it may be a situation where, you know, we're doing our job well or just as good as anybody else and we don't get promoted. Why do you think that that's the case? And then how do we square that circle, man? Because, you know, it's a young brother's trying to get started. He's like, man, I'm not even getting in the door. And when I'm getting in the door, they're kind of pissing on me. So what does that look like?
Well, I think it's a couple things. I think one, when you say you're not even getting in the door. Okay. So first of all, that's going to be the first touch is the resume. The resume has to be appealing. Man, there's hundreds of people applying for jobs. When I was at Warner Bros., there was thousands of people applying for one job. So you have to show what value and what you bring to the table.
How do I learn how to do that?
It can't be, I just submitted a resume, I'm good.
How do I learn how to do that if I don't know? Where do I go? What do I do?
Well, I mean, there's you can go online to a lot of stuff now. Now, you know, I'm a dinosaur. I didn't have all these online options. There's an online option to talk about how to write a resume, how to interview, things of that nature.
Okay.
So you can do a lot of that online. Indeed and all these have different courses. So you can do things of that nature.
Okay.
But you have to be proactive. You can't just say, I sent out 5 or 10 resumes. And again, if it's that resume, that's one resume for all the different jobs. So you have to look into it and say, what's this industry doing? What's going next? Knowing digital is coming down the pike. Knowing if it's 3D or 4D. Knowing if it's, so it can be a host of different things, but you just have to be on your game like that. The other thing is various organizations in industry. There's trade magazines and then there's organizations. Join those organizations. You want to be there. These are individuals that are members, are people that work throughout agencies, streaming services, broadcast, cable, studios. You meet these people. That's the whole thing too, relationship. I tell people all the time, you want to network, and people think of it as the cliche of, oh, networking. Networking is not just to say, go out and have a drink. I don't drink. Somebody takes me out, we drink cranberry juice. So I'm not going anywhere to have a drink, but I'm going there to build relationships, to gain knowledge. You go somewhere and you meet the hiring manager. The hiring manager is the one that's promoting and pushing. So I'm considered HR working with a hiring manager, right?
Okay.
So what I do is I look at all the resumes that come in for any job. I pre-screen and forward them to the hiring manager and say, these are the recommended individuals that you should meet with.
Okay.
So at that case, now you're looking at, okay, it's not just going in law somewhere. It's not just going into an individual. Now you want to get in front of those hiring managers who are making the decisions. You can meet them at events like this.
Okay.
And then these organizations too, they have resume writing workshops and things of that nature too.
Let's take it all the way back. So you saying that these young brothers, they need to use their online resources to kind of figure out the questions they don't have. You talked about mentoring and things like that. And my question is always, okay, where do I find a mentor? Because we tell people, hey, you know, you need to be mentored by somebody. Or how do I find a mentor?
Well, one of those organizations is NAMIC. NAMIC is the National Association for Multi-Ethnicity and Communications.
I'm not in communications.
They have a mentoring program.
I'm not in
Well,
communications.
it depends. I mean, if that's the case, we can go all out. The city has mentoring programs.
Okay.
Finance has mentoring programs.
Okay.
I mean, it's various. Like I say,
I just got to look for them.
Any industry has local organizations and trade magazines for each industry.
Okay.
So when I say something like NAMIC and they have a mentoring program, mentoring is great and it's a formal process. Okay. You also want champions. You want ambassadors. You know, if somebody says, I have this job opening, and somebody says, oh, I know Darren Early, he'd be great for that job. That might not be your formal mentor that's going to break down your whole background.
But that's a champion for you.
Right, that's a champion
I like
who
that.
also knows your elevator pitch.
Okay.
You want to have that elevator pitch. Somebody says, nice to meet you, bam. You need to give it to them right then. You know, you might not see them again have that opportunity.
And for somebody who doesn't know what an elevator pitch is it fair to say that it's in 2 minutes or less, you can tell them who you are, what you do, why you need to be hired, and what you're looking for?
Correct.
Okay, I like that.
And if you want to incorporate top 10 reasons to hire you.
That's just wild, man, that you would do that, and it worked. You know, because they're like, okay, this dude, we need confidence if you're going to sell some stuff.
Well, it's follow-up. The whole thing is follow-up. So you'll send a thank you note. And then you might say, well, I haven't heard. I sent the thank you note a week ago, and I still hadn't heard back. I'm going to send this now. That's another thing that's now you're on their brain. They could have been busy and caught up, and they're like, oh, wow, that was a little different and unique. Oh, and I did get this thank you note. Give them a call. We're doing seconds.
Okay.
You know, things of that nature.
Okay, cool.
So I just think, so the mentoring thing is really important. And you find people, you know, and then there's youth mentoring groups, you know, and then there's mentoring groups within the organizations. So that kind of thing. But I think partnering and getting with an organization, when you go and they have panels and they have events, people will tell you, I would have clients that tell me, man, I don't really have time for lunch. I had this and that. We go out and golf for 5 hours. Like, you didn't have time for lunch, but you know, we can go. So, but it's all about building relationships.
So let me ask this before we shift gears a little bit. If I'm a young man and I'm really trying to move this to the next level, finding a mentor is key.
Right. Or ambassador or champion.
Or ambassador or champion. But also, I'm trying to understand, how do we help young folks navigate this world of social media, where coming out of COVID, you know, so where the human interaction is not necessarily the same, because a lot of young people don't necessarily know how to tell their stories, and don't necessarily, when we talk about elevator pitch, because that's really just telling your story, right? What? Give me a suggestion, man.
Well, we got to keep in mind.
No, you know what?
We got to keep in mind. You know you better than anybody know you.
So that's the message.
So if you can't convey yourself, how is your mentor going to give all this breakdown and background on you and then put you in front of them and you're like...
So let me ask you this. You talked about the lessons you learned from your dad, right? You got 2 children. What do you do, or what have you done as a parent to kind of equip them with, because I know your son won this big business competition when he was in high school and stuff. What have you done as a parent to equip them with that level of confidence or whatever it is, so that they could navigate this work market, this employment market? What have you done?
Well, I think the biggest thing, you talk to them about communication. So I mean, you said people don't communicate as well. You communicate. My kids will know if it's this program, this product. When they're writing an essay for a certain scholarship and things of that nature, when I would take them, when I would work booths, when, you know, we'd have community things, and I would have booths and things of that nature, my kids would be at the booth.
Exposure.
Right. And they would be able to include that on their resume. I did community relations with this. I was working the booth. I did summer stuff.
So wait. So it's not exposure. It's both. It's really exposing them, but also giving them some stuff that can kind of build their resume before they even have a resume.
Always.
Solid.
Always.
I like that.
So
Okay.
it's those opportunities, and just as the kids see you and what you do. You know, now certain perks, and everybody's not in entertainment, it's certain perks. My kids would go to whatever movie screenings. You know, when I was in radio, they would have whatever CD or you know, that nature as well. They would have whatever home entertainment DVD. Right. My kids would be at the Warner Brother lot, in the Harry Potter Museum, and all over the lot. Right. You know, so things of that nature. So I think exposure, you know, really helps out a lot when they can see this. Okay. We talk about before, when we say some kids have said they've never been out the state of California. They said they've never been to the beach. Right. You know, things of that nature. And that's because exposure.
And we have a lot of conversations with young people that I work with in my programs about, you know, if you have Jordans and don't have a passport, we got a problem. Right. You know, because like you said, it's about that exposure. That's really critical. Exactly. So, you know, yeah, man, this has been really good. I'm hoping that, you know, that folks remember Just that that getting a job is a strategic, not it's a strategic endeavor,
It really
and not
is.
necessarily just like luck and throw stuff against the wall, see what
really
sticks. So that's good, man. Listen, so like I said, we're talking to dads with daughters. So I want you to pivot your brain for a second.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you 3 words, all right, and then I want you to we'll go from there. So the words are girls, grit, or grace. Pick one of those words, and then I'll hit you with a follow-up question. Girls, grit, or grace?
Girls.
Girls. All right. Parker Drew,
Mm-hmm.
what has been the joy of parenting your girl? And then what's one of the fears that you have in parenting your girl?
It's an instant connection with daughters.
Mm-hmm.
Daughters and their fathers. You know, I say she had me at a hello. Maybe I say she had me at the first cry.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but it's just that relationship, that growth, knowing that the responsibilities you have,
Mm-hmm.
and I used the word provider before, knowing that you have to be there for them no matter what,
Mm-hmm.
Things of that nature. So just to be a father to her and let her see me move like the G in lasagna, to know that she can count on me for any and everything.
Okay.
Whether she's in Massachusetts or even when she's home.
Okay.
So I just think that joy, being able to discuss with her when she has things that, are troubling her and things of that nature, knowing that she can come and talk to me.
So what's your greatest fear?
That she isn't treated by somebody like she needs to be treated, like the queen she is. That person spiritually doesn't commit, doesn't, go forward with, and that should be both ways. They should grow together.
Mm-hmm.
But to find someone who is really compatible, that she can grow with, and she loves, and that she's treated in the best way possible.
Okay. That's fair, man.
Right.
That's fair. And I know that as we're talking to different dads, a lot of the conversation is about, that next step where you can't control. You know, like you said, it's that she's not treated or that she doesn't understand her value.
But they know
and her
you're there.
worth. Yeah.
So if anything, goes on, and not what I'm not saying, I'm not putting nothing on a relationship, but I'm just saying overall.
Yeah.
As she's looking for a job, as she's looking for a place to stay, as she's looking for any of that, but knowing that she has me.
Yeah, it's funny because I was talking to Malia, my third daughter, and we were talking about something. I said, "Baby," and she was saying something. And I said, "Well, baby, you know that Daddy might not be here when that happens." She's like, "Man, stop tripping," But that's a reality, and so you wanna imprint, you wanna put those things in their lives that will outlive you.
Correct.
Because
as my dad has
best
done,
case scenario, they outlive us.
As my dad has done, and plus when you said to Malia, even if that's the case, Uncle's here. So
yeah, that's real, and that goes back to a whole other conversation in terms of having a team that's bigger than your parents. All right, man. So you've talked a lot about employment and talked about how did you navigate unemployment and a lot of good information based upon the lessons you've learned in life. What advice would you give to fathers of girls?
Ownership.
What does that mean?
And I give advice that ownership. You need to own property. You need to own a business. You need to own any of that. So you can dictate and you won't have to worry about unemployment and things of that nature. So just as you're strategically setting up your plan, my estate planning, when I set that up and knowing that what my kids will have in the future, that kind of stuff, you want to have ownership in those things so you can make sure that's available. Okay. I think advice, I live my life by quotes. I told you before, nothing can dim the light that shines from within.
Right.
A setback is merely a setup for a comeback.
Right.
Success is based on how you overcome failure. Character versus reputation. Reputation is what they think you are. Character is who you really are. I think Nipsey Hussle said it best. If you look at your circle and you're not inspired, that's not a circle, that's a cage.
I thought Nipsey said all my life I've been grinding.
Yeah,
no, I'm kidding.
There you go. That too.
No,
so
it's
I
all
think
good.
that,
No, but that goes back to your piece of ownership.
Right. And even, I am with Muhammad Ali. he said, don't count the days, make the days count.
Yeah.
So it's certain thing, and if you're not doing something for others, then you're living your life wrong.
Okay.
And do your thing regardless who's watching. That's integrity. So ultimately, you just want to stay on the grind, stay focused, put in a plan, and whether that plan is saving, things of that nature, whether you're partnering with somebody on a deal or something like that, any of that across the board.
All right, solid, man. Folks, the piece that stays with me is ownership. Own your business, own some property, own something so you can build legacy. We always talk about generational wealth, and that's something that, in the Black community, we don't always get there. But that's what Black Dads think. We're thinking about ownership. We're thinking about moving things forward. And we're excited that you were able to join us tonight. MT, I love you, boy. Thank you for coming out.
No doubt.
And everybody else, we'll see you on the next episode. Peace.
Back at you.
All right.